You've been working on these growth models for 10 plus years. What's your latest and greatest thinking on building a growth model?
Building a growth model is still often the first step because I find that actually many companies.
Hila Qu, a growth expert who's led success at Acorns and GitLab. With over a decade of experience in product-led growth, Hila shares powerful strategies to help companies scale.
When we begin to have this conversation, they often cannot give me a clear answer. What are you trying to grow? Are you sure what you're working on is your biggest lever? Because from my early days of working on growth, I really believe in this philosophy that growth is really about finding the highest leverage things at any given time that you can do.
What I personally experienced as an issue was as soon as something is measured, it ceases to be important. How do growth leaders kind of deal with this problem?
As a growth leader, you want to protect your team when you believe you're working on the right metric. It doesn't mean growth is all on you. Your team is not only about generating a number, but also delivering value to your customers. That's the long-term thinking you need as a growth leader.
The growth model describes what's as is. How do you kind of develop that confidence for we should make an investment in a particular area?
In the end of the day, growth is about experimentation and you have to iterate. So the other trick for any new growth leader is
Hila, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Aakash.
As a longtime reader of your work, I couldn't be more excited. You've said metrics incentivize short-term thinking, but if it's not measured, it's not improved. Can you explain?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I thought about this the other day. I work with a bunch of clients, helping them with their growth efforts. And there is this company, they're really good at doing experiments, measuring with data, and they have their entire website and product highly optimized. But they are stuck. They kind of knows that if they change anything, even it's small, it may drop their metric. So it really ties to this, metrics are great. The first step is really you want to set up metric, measure everything. Second step, you want to launch experiments using data so that you can measure the progress. But third step, which is very important, not every company get there, but if you're really good at data-driven, experiment-driven, you may get yourself in a place that if you're overly thinking about metrics, you might be incentivized only do things that will produce short-term results, or not invest in things maybe doesn't give you immediate feedback. So it is like a balance you need to have in mind for sure.
So when you were leading growth at Acorns and at GitLab, how did you and your engineering counterpart kind of balance engineering activity that's going to directly move metrics versus tech debt and these other things that we definitely have to invest in for the future?
Yeah, definitely. I think first of all, from a company and organizational perspective, you always need to make sure you have teams and kind of efforts that more focused on metrics, right? Like growth experiments. You may have a roadmap of a lot of things that you want to focus on improving conversion rate, activation rate, referral. All of those are super critical. On the other hand, you also want to make sure you have dedicated space in your strategic roadmap and also in your organizational chart, like to focus on longer term things. In addition to growth marketing, you want to also invest in community and brand marketing, right? Not because they are not measurable, just ignore them. Similarly, in product, you want to focus on those experiments, touch metrics, but you also need to allocate. My rule of thumb is at least there should be one swim lane dedicated to either tech debt, as you mentioned, infrastructure work. Sometimes you may get around by just doing stuff, right? Without fixing the gaps in your data, fixing the gaps in your infrastructure. Or you realize that you need to build a new thing. You need to build a new website. You need to build a new feature in order to push this forward rather than keep doing optimizations on the existing stuff. So at least reserve one swim lane, like 1/3 of your team's efforts on those type of work so that you can have both short-term success and long-term success.
Is your product team having trouble in capturing the true voice of customers? That's because user feedback is scattered across channels, making it nearly impossible to catch crucial conversations. It's time you're able to centralize your voice of customer from everything like your CRM, customer portals, call recordings, or even public reviews. That's where Zeta.io comes in, our podcast partner today. With Zeta's AI, you can plug your customer conversations in, and it will allow you to easily slice and dice these into actionable insights for your key product areas so that you can do more to improve NPS scores, analyze features, identify new features, or perhaps understand why you lost a few deals. This paves the way for planning the right features and channeling your efforts into actually planning and building your roadmap to finally close that loop 10 times faster. Product managers around the world use Zeta.io and use it to really improve their product discovery. It's plug and play in just minutes. So visit zeta.io/LPS/Aakash Gupta to get an extra 10% off. Okay, I like that. So one team, one swim lane, something like 1/3 to these other types of initiatives. Another way that I've managed it in the past, because sometimes the percentages can feel arbitrary, is to almost put it into like buckets of work. Like we have bugs. We're going to categorize our bugs in terms of Sev 0, 1, 2, 3. Sev 0 and 1, we're always just going to address no matter what. So I think that can be another way to think about it for folks who are listening. I want to move into growth models because actually, if you Google growth model, you rank number 1 for your article on Medium about growth models and the growth equation. So the internet, Google has anointed you the world's expert on growth models. And I know you told this story in another podcast that when you were hired, and you were hired as the first PM of growth at growthhackers.com, one of your first tasks was to create a growth model for the business. So you've been working on these growth models for 10 plus years. What's your latest and greatest thinking on building a growth model?
Yeah, I'm glad Google recognized me. I hope like those new AI search tools still recognize me in that higher ranking as well. So actually, when I started as VP Growth at Acorns and later at GitLab, even nowadays working with my advisory clients, building a growth model is still often the first step, because I find that actually many companies, they want to work on growth. They may already started their growth efforts. They may already started experiments or driving certain metrics. But when we begin to have this conversation, they often cannot give me a clear answer. What are you trying to grow? Are you sure what you are working on is your biggest lever? Because from my early days of working on growth, I really believe in this philosophy that growth is really about finding the highest leverage things at any given time that you can do. How do you do that? Is actually, there is a step. So building growth models start from you want to define success. That is a kind of often something ignored or not well discussed before jumping into actions. Taking product-led growth as an example, now I work with a lot of companies who want to either jumpstart with product-led growth or have something, want to make it better. They often have not very clear idea what are they trying to grow there. So there are typically 3 kinds of metrics or success metrics for PLG. Sometimes companies are like, when they say they want to do PLG, they're really wanting to do self-service revenue. They want to grow that self-service part so that they require less sales, or things are more automated, or free-to-paid conversion rate, right? Some other times, like a company, when they are talking about product-led growth or PLG, they are thinking about, I want to get more free users. I want to get more active teams. That's the most important thing for them. And the third case is actually companies, they heard about this concept of PQL, product qualified leads, PQA, product qualified accounts. They're like, awesome. I need more leads. That's the most important thing for me. So it's actually, that's very important to clarify, right? To align. Many times company, they have this general idea of, I want to do growth, I want to do PLG, but they are not very clear, or they are not aligned internally. What is the most important thing? Once you have the most important metric, success metric, the next step is build a growth model. So growth model actually can come into different shapes and sizes, right? Let's say you define your success metric. Let's say it's PQL. You want to get more product qualified leads. How do you break it down? How do you use a math equation to describe how do you grow PQL? What are the sub metrics? What are the different levers you can pull? There are different ways, right? You can think about, I want to have more opportunities for users while they're using product to contact sales. Those are called hand raisers, right? Or I want to observe how those free users are using my product. Once they hit certain threshold, I want to contact them. Those are called usage-based PQLs. So that's one way to break it down. Once you break it down, you can begin to think about, how do I get more hand raisers? How do I get more usage-based PQLs? What are the different levers I can pull, right? There are other ways, right? You may think about, I can continue to get more new users coming in. And through this new user pool, how do I get more PQL, right? Or I have a large pool of free users already. They are active. How do I generate more from them? So growth model is really this idea of having a clear success metric and break it down into the next layer, so that you know what are the sub levers you can pull. And then once you have that, the beauty of growth model, I mean, you can tell, like I was a science major. I studied biology actually, and economics. So once you have something, you can really begin to look at this equation and calculate the metrics, right? You can compare with benchmarks. How do you compare? How do you stack with other companies in similar position, similar industry? You can also think about companies' overall priorities and find this biggest lever. At that time you can pull, and there may be multiple levers, but there comes in priority. So that's why I a big fan of identify kind of the success metric, build a growth model, that process so much.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is you start with a North Star success metric. We know that a lot of companies have these North Star metrics. I think Airbnb is super famous for nights booked. So then you break that down into like bookings times length of night. And then you look into bookings and you look at, okay, how much supply you have and the percent of supply that's been bought out or something like that. So it's basically you create this tree of metrics. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, exactly. And when you are describing it that way, it also kind of touch upon one of the constraints of growth model. That's one of my new thinking over the years. It can only describe things as is for the most part, right? Because you're breaking down something that already exists. You're breaking down into the next layer, sub-metrics. So those things already exist. It doesn't create things out of nothing. So that's why this is important. But on the other hand, you also have to have strategic thinking, like visionary thinking, to think about what are the things that doesn't even exist in my model that I may need to add or implement by building new features, reaching new segment and things like that.
Yeah. And what I've witnessed over the last, I would say 3 to 4 years in my personal career was like a convergence of the product growth model and the finance growth model. So essentially at a firm, at Apollo, our strategic finance folks, they would want to create a model that kind of justifies our heavy product investment because both companies had done so much product investment. So then they would come to me as like head of product growth and they'd say, Aakash, like in our financial model, you need to show us like what these drivers are. And we need to be able to model out the drivers. So at Apollo, for instance, we were a true PLG product. So it was how many free users we have, how many we're converting to paid, what plans those are going to, and how many upgrade and how many churn over time. So we created like this financial growth model. Have you seen is it kind of an isolated case of my career, or is that kind of the broader trend of kind of the convergence of the financial and the product growth models?
Yeah, I think It's funny you mentioned that because the other day I was reading and there is this old concept. I think it's some accounting concept of metric tree or something like that. I was like, oh, it's really similar to a growth model actually. And it was invented many years ago by a company called Dow Chemical, I think, right? Like, so there are definitely different versions of things, and things started way even before a growth model, I would imagine. I think I definitely seen something similar, especially, for example, when I was at GitLab, our North Star metric is ARR, right? And then how you break down ARR, that growth model is very similarly aligned with the financial modeling. One thing that I think as product growth leaders or product growth practitioners, we need to be mindful is that financial team, they focus on finance, ARR, that's awesome. Those are the ultimate metric, especially if you're a public company, right? Those are the key. However, product growth team need to be extra careful of working on that, but with customer experience and customer value in mind. Because if you think about what make a great North Star metric, there is this circle that's like business objective, revenue, the financial goals, right? That's super important. But there's another circle, which is customer value. Again, going back to the initial discussion, metrics are short term. Financial metrics are even more, I wouldn't say it's short term, but it's really direct, right? If you overly focused on financial metric, it might even incentivize things that's maybe not directly impacting customer value, maybe giving you immediate results, but longer term is a disaster. So I think even though I definitely, similar to you, saw that convergence between strategic finance model and growth model, still we want to be more careful by focusing on something that can represent customer value as well, in addition to finance value.
Yeah. The way I often try to instrumentalize this for my teams is to think about, okay, what are the leading and the lagging metrics, or the input or the output metrics? Is that how you try to help product teams as well? Is like perhaps the experimental North Star might be an input metric that fits into our growth model that eventually delivers the output?
Yeah, I think that's a very common practice. The other thing we do is when we are picking those success metrics, right? We try to take a step back. We try to usually stay away from the company's revenue goal, ARR. We focus something more like active user, active team, or certain high value actions that indicate users are really using the product. They're really realizing the value. Like by having product growth team focus on those rather than directly, like there might be a modeling that mapping those feature adoption or high value action into conversion or into revenue. But the product growth teams are primarily focusing on those customer engagement and value metrics directly.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to start with your quote on metrics to incentivize short-term thinking, because what I personally experienced as an issue was, I think it's called Goodhart's Law, which is that as soon as something is measured, it ceases to be important. So I would put my neck out on the line and I'd be the person who's going to get cut if the input metric moves, but the output metric doesn't. And that's exactly what would happen is like the growth team at a firm is owning, like, for instance, monthly active users in the app. We like 5x that, but ARR did not go 5x up at all. And so then people come and say, well, were those investments even worth it? How do growth leaders kind of deal with this problem?
Yeah, I think in your case, it's interesting to figure out, like dig a little bit deeper in terms of why, right? Is it because when you are modeling the growth model in the very beginning, the connection is not there, right? Like maybe the growth model is wrong. That's one possibility. Not saying that's the case for you. Or sometimes there are so many other variables that's at play, right? The world is a different place. Maybe you overlap with COVID when you are working on that period of time. Then that really supersedes whatever growth efforts you're doing during that time. Or maybe the kind of lead time is really long between some user action translating into revenue metric. So I think you want to understand a little bit like what is happening there. On the other hand, I also want to caution that sometimes as a growth leader, you want to protect your team when you believe you're working on the right metric, right? Because if every team is finance team, ideally every team in the company is finance team, everyone just have an ARR goal allocated to them. Isn't that easy? Isn't that wonderful, right? Everything can add up and then revenue grow and stock price grow and all of that. But it doesn't work that way. You cannot allocate ARR to every single team. Every team, their job exists for a reason. Growth team as well. Sometimes I get your pain because I was a VP growth. Sometimes I get the feeling that entire company's growth is on my shoulder. Like, I don't know whether you feel that or not. Like, my team is responsible for new user growth. My team is also responsible for retention. I mean, like, between all of those, that's pretty much the company, right? But I think over time, I begin to realize that just because your team is the growth team, it doesn't mean growth is all on you. You also want to be very careful and very strategic in terms of setting up the metrics, setting up the expectations that your team is not only about generating number, but also delivering value to your customers. That's the long-term thinking you need as a growth leader versus, like, again, only focus on short-term immediate wins on metrics.
I think that's one of the big pains that people face. Now, another plus side of growth models, and you've talked about this a lot, is you use the growth model to figure out the right focus area as kind of the starting point for how you should organize your team, what investments you should be making. So can you double click on that for us?
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing I observe, especially when I work with some of my clients, is that there is this tendency to jump into action based on maybe there is some observation, there is some data, but without doing a comprehensive analysis and growth modeling. For example, they may just say, oh, we really want to focus on expansion. Let's do that. Let's all in. Or we believe the conversion is the problem. Let's just start doing experiments there already. The problem with this approach is you may generate some short-term results if you are lucky, but you may have actually have the opportunity cost if you focus on another area that is a much bigger ROI opportunity for your input, for your investment. So growth modeling really gave you opportunity to do that. Let's say if you build this growth model, you want to improve your self-service revenue as an example, right? You break it down, you begin to realize that actually I didn't have any problem with my customer retention. I did that at Acorns. Like, initially I was hired as director of retention. That's my title, literally. And then when I came in, I began to do research, build a growth model. And when I break down the number of active investors, let's say that's our North Star metric, into the new funnel, the existing retention funnel, our retention is pretty strong. It can be better, but if I really focus there, I'm missing out on the bigger opportunity, right? On the other hand, our new user acquisition funnel, from downloading, from like finish registration account, make a deposit, like use the investment features, there is a pretty steep drop off, and the third month's retention is bad. If they pass through the third month, their retention is actually pretty strong, even pretty high double digit after a year, right? So that really gave my team the correct focus, right? Let's really focus on there. This is the biggest leverage in my growth model at this time. we work on this, we improve it. Once it hit certain threshold, maybe we begin to look for next leverage. So that's the importance of this more methodical approach versus just like all in one specific place, or throw darts on the board and trying to like hit something.
I love that example from Acorns. So it's one thing to diagnose that the metrics on retention are pretty good compared to new user acquisition. The hard part that I think some growth leaders who will message me face a struggle with is, how do I figure out if I can actually move the part that is worse? Like, I was hired to be director of retention. If I go to them and I say, I want to work on fixing new user acquisition, and I don't actually move it, then I think my job might be more at risk because I've also reshaped my job, right? So how do you kind of develop that confidence? Like you said, the growth model describes what's as is. How do you kind of develop that confidence for we should make an investment in a particular area?
Yeah, definitely. I think at Acorns, I was at risk because I changed my job description, right? And if I don't deliver results, it's bad. But I built my confidence in a couple of ways. One is by having this growth model, right? It's not through data analysis. It's also talking with a lot of existing leaders and team members, right? For example, our VP Finance, I talked with him. He's like, oh, Hila, like, I think there's something there. We did some analysis before. We saw users, if they turn on the recurring investment, they do have much better conversion, retention in 3 months and all of that. And when I talk to our customer service team, they gave me like a lot of insights in terms of what are the complaining points of new users. If our user calling in first month, second month to cancel, what are some common reasons and pain points? So having those conversations as a new leader coming in with existing team members is really helpful because they can give you observations, even though it's anecdote information, right? Beyond just data, through their interaction with customers, through past discussions and things like that. And the other thing is you can compare with benchmarks, like I mentioned. Again, benchmarks are tricky, right? You cannot find the exact similar product that match your situation so that the benchmark is so comparable. But it's helpful to give you some high level hints, right? If you observe when you break down your growth model, your activation rate is 5%. Is it good? Is it bad? If it's bad, how much room do you have, right? You can potentially, one thing to do is look for some benchmarks for your particular category, right? Like fintech, app, B2C. What are some close benchmark you can find? And there are different sources there as well, right? You can compare, but it may give you some rough idea in terms of how far away you are. And even better, if you build a growth model, right, you probably have those high level metrics in multiple areas. You may have a activation rate of yourself. You may have a retention rate. You can compare those with the benchmarks. And by looking at how, even though it's a range, it's never 100% accurate, just by looking at how comparably far away you are from the benchmark, that may give you some idea as well, right? Let's say your activation is 5%, the best in class is 10%, your retention is 60%, the best in class is 50%, right? That comparison can give you some insights as well. And then the last trick is do something small. Do something small that's low efforts. You don't boil the ocean on your day one, and just observe, are there some signal, right? At Acorns, when I begin to realize there are some problems in the new user funnel, at that time, I don't even have an engineer assigned to me. So I have to beg like our lead engineer to do something really small in the registration flow, just changing some copy. And then we saw some positive results that really gave me more confidence before all into that. So I think all of those probably can help you get some idea. But in the end of the day, growth is about experimentation and you have to iterate. So the other trick for any new growth leader is you almost need to be a advocacy. You need to be a speaker, right? You need to talk about all of those stuff, and through education, through advocacy, building confidence, giving yourself more time and more opportunities to test as well.
Love all three of those. And maybe the fourth one I would add is go talk to other growth leaders in your sub-industry and figure out where they have allocated people. Because if they have an activation team, it's a little bit higher likelihood that your activation team will have an ROI. Now, if they don't have a retention team, you might want to ask yourself, is retention, too broad of a problem? And that's where I wanted to turn next, because this is the other challenge I think growth leaders consistently face. I certainly face this a lot, for instance, at a firm. I would say 90% of the best ideas we came up with, the team who owned the surface area took that idea. They basically said, yep, that's a great change to the homepage, and we're going to do that. And so then how do you as a growth leader kind of carve out the space? Because if we're going to the most high leverage areas, certainly the business has already put some people on that area. They've realized it's high leverage if it's a good company, if it's growing. So you almost somehow then you're coming with your engineers and designers and you're saying like, I want to work there. But they're like, no, we want to take that. That's a great idea.
Yeah. I think it really depends on how the team is set up. Sounds like at a firm, you have a growth team. You also have those dedicated maybe product team or website team, right? They own those surface area. Your team don't own any of those surface area, but you are tasked to improve metrics in some of those areas. My situation at Acorns are a little bit different. We do have those core product lines, right? Those like maybe a team focused on our debit card product, our team focused on the IRA product, but a lot of the product interface, the some of the key funnel and experience, referral program, the homepage, those are not owned by anyone. So my team took that advantage. We basically take over a lot of those critical flows and shared real estates. That's across entire product line. That gave us more freedom of experimentation. But my situation at GitLab is more similar to what you described. We have all those teams owning all those product surfaces. My team doesn't have any direct ownership. So a couple things. I think one thing that's still helpful, especially if you're a new growth leader, is find some place that's not owned by anyone else, because you need some time to hit the ground running, generating some results. You don't want to, in the very beginning, already get yourself into the situation of having to get 3 approval, convince 5 other stakeholders, and also join 3 different meetings. Then you can do something, right? So if in your case, you can find some place that's not owned by someone historically, maybe owning there and start doing some experiments there if it happens to have some potential opportunity. And once you have some success on your belts, you can think about how to expand from there, right? That's one. The other one is, I would say, if everything is, in your case, if all the surface areas are taken, right, are owned by someone, you can position your team potentially as almost like as an internal consultant and center of excellence, right? I've seen that as well. So your team, the growth team, may be focused on building infrastructure, experimentation platform, data, dashboarding, and also you may start some experimentation, but the goal is spreading the insights, spreading the process, train the other team to do the best. And you may collaborate with those teams as well, right? Maybe part of your team's success is to helping other teams' success. I'm curious, I don't know what happens in the end. Like, did you follow one of those 2 model, or like you just figure out a way to magically collaborate with the core product teams?
Yeah. So what ended up happening is we did pick up the stuff that nobody owned. but it was not owned by anybody because it was lower impact. So the stuff we started doing was lower impact compared to other teams. And so we reorged and we said like, yeah, it's not really working in that model where we do stuff that isn't having the ROI compared to other teams when our people cost the same. Growth people, if anything, they cost more than regular core people. So we reorged and I led one of the core product areas because it wasn't allowing me to drive enough impact versus the 7 core product areas. It was obvious from each 7 of those what could drive impact. And it was due to the growth model, because when we look at the growth model, like those 7 areas, it's so obvious. We can just see if we can move this metric, it's going to drive this much in ARR. On the other hand, for these random surfaces, transactional emails, referrals, like they couldn't drive as much.
Yeah, that's awesome. See, growth model helps, right? Kind of having that clarity, and also then combining that with organizational change. That's actually pretty common when it's involving growth leader and growth teams. I've definitely seen leaders, for example, shifting ownership or shifting organizations even, because it's such a new thing. Nobody usually in the beginning knows how this is supposed to work in your organization.
Yeah, 100%. So one of the tools that you have for growth leaders is called the Growth Full Funnel Audit. Can you break that down for us?
Yes. So this actually has some overlap with the growth modeling, but it's a more simplified version and it's more tactical, right? So when I work with a lot of my clients, one of the first few projects is we do this growth full funnel audit, because if you think about a product-led growth funnel, really, there are 8 growth levers. Those are most important and most visible. And those are usually areas with plenty of opportunity for experimentation to get started. There is the new user activation and conversion funnel. This is mostly self-serve, right? Thinking about what are the most important levers. The first one is what are the marketing channels? Maybe what are the growth loops? Basically, what are the different things that are bringing you new users, new visitors, right? And then the next important leverage point is your homepage. Maybe you can say your entire website, but the homepage is really, or landing page is really the most important real estate, right? How is the conversion rate there from visit to sign up? Are you getting quality signups as well? There are a bunch of things you can do on your homepage that can generate immediate results. The third lever is your sign up and onboarding experience. That including what questions do you ask in the sign up, the profiling questions, right? Sometimes companies are afraid to ask questions. They're like, the shorter, the better. Let's make it quick. However, they may get a bunch of signups, but without knowing too much about them, or they're just bad. Like they're not even care. They have very low intent of doing anything with your product, but you make it too easy, right? The second part to that is the onboarding experience. How do you set those new users up for success? How do you help them get to the aha moment quickly, right? So the sign up to activation rate is the key metric in this stage. And then self-service checkout. Just think about maybe this is a B2C app or this is some SMB using a B2B product, right? How do you make that checkout process, like including the pricing page, super easy, super simple, and to maximize the checkout success rate? So those are the 4 key levers, key real estates in the new user funnel. And the other 4 are in the existing user. How do you get them to engage, and how do you monetize more from them? And the first lever in this area is how do you drive engagement with your users? Sometimes we really emphasize about activation. How do you get new users to aha moments? But that's really first 30 days, right? First 3 months of your user's journey. What happens next is continuous. It's not like you activated them and they are happily ever after using your product. So how do you think about continuous onboarding, designing that golden journey, right? What's the next feature they should be adopting to really realizing the value of your product? There are some great metrics and methodologies there. And then the other thing is actually less popular or not paid a lot of attention by people is something called in-product monetization triggers. So especially with a lot of freemium product, right? How they may be using your products, but how do you have those triggers in your product? Maybe they trip the limits of usage. Maybe you give them a gentle reminder when they're using a free version of this feature. There's a better one here. How do you help them discover there are better things out there and they upgrade? And that's actually a very important lever. And then the entire pricing design, the pricing page is the third important lever in the existing user monetization. And the last one for PLG products specifically, how do you think about product-led sales, PQLs and stuff? So if you observe this 8 levers across new user and existing user full funnel, you can actually compare the metric with benchmarks, right? To identify big opportunity, big gaps. You can also launch some potentially quick experiments in some of those areas because there are common best practice. There are ways you should design your pricing page. There are ways you can test on your homepage. There are tricks you can pull in, set up those in-product monetization triggers. So that's why this is one of the tactic I use a lot to identify some opportunity, but also generate some quick experimentation ideas.
Very cool. And are you comparing those to particular benchmarks? Do you have particular go-tos for those 8 levers?
So the benchmarks there are 2 parts, right? One is, again, like I mentioned, what are the metric benchmark? So you can find, like, there are different sources, right? Like OpenView has a lot of great benchmark for PLG products. Lenny's has some, and there are some different benchmarks you can compare with. And then there are the best practices and the principles, right? What are some best practices you should put on homepage, on pricing page, onboarding? I would say those are more spreaded, but there are definitely best practices out there in terms of what is the best way to do this. One trick I like to do is doing tear downs of kind of those critical pages, right? If you do some tear downs of pricing pages, you do some tear downs of home pages, you begin to realize some of the patterns, right? What makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and compare that with best practice, with metric, can really begin to give you some ideas.
Okay, love it. So if we think about those spread out best practices, maybe we can even go lever by lever if you want, because I know you do this with your clients of where can people go for good guidance on pricing pages, good guidance on these different levers?
Yeah, let's say, for example, I think there are some with more resources. There are some with less resources. Like I basically pull a lot of those resources together myself over the years while working with my clients. But just a few quick example, like on the homepage design, right? One framework I really like is the positioning framework. Basically, I think First Round has a great article about this, talking about how can you really nail the positioning of your product by filling in something simple, right? This product is different from a bunch of competitors or alternative solutions because it can serve this target audience who have these needs or pain points by offering these benefits and supported by this capability, right? So a framework like this can really help you think through your product's positioning and make it really element by element. And then you can reuse a lot of those elements on your homepage, right? When you think about the tagline of your homepage, right? You can make it more focused on category, right? If this product is in a well-known category, just by saying this product is a modern day CRM, people understand what it is. It may not be the best positioning, but at least give you some useful information when the visitors scan through the website, right? You can also make it be about the use case. This tool help you schedule meeting. This tool help you save time with your email, right? Again, that's clear. When you make it about the benefits, sometimes it can fall into the trap of being too overly generic, right? This tool can help you connect, improve your workflow efficiency by three times, or connect all your workflows, right? That type of positioning really can be applied to 10 other tools and maybe 100 other tools. So that framework, I really like. It forces you to think through what's really unique about your product. What are some best things to showcase on your homepage? That's an example. I think with the sign up and onboarding, there are a lot of great resources, right, about onboarding activation specifically. Reforge has some great class and framework. There are some others out there as well. Pricing page, again, I haven't seen a lot of great resources, but I know, for example, Emily Kramer from Market One, she has a great article about breaking down the pricing page. And I think Elena even has a great article as well. But basically, I think the most important thing is understand those 8 levers. This 8 levers really are the high leverage points typically in your funnel, and one may be more important than the other for your specific case. But once you know this, do a quick scan, know where is the biggest opportunity, and then you can begin to develop ideas for potential experimentation in that area. Again, by comparing the metric with benchmarks, understanding best practice, and doing some teardowns of this particular product area as well.
Okay. And I think that's Elena Verna, right? For our pricing pages. Yeah. Her article is pretty awesome. So it sounds like over your years as a growth leader, you've found these really good resources across these 8 levers, and that's what you compare to. So really, for people listening, shape your content diet. Follow First Round, follow Elena Verna, follow Reforge, and some of the resources that Hila has mentioned, so that you can find those golden nuggets and you can kind of save those somewhere, so that as you're going through this audit, you can compare. So one area, I might have missed this because I'm not visually looking at the audit, but where does expansion fit into this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question, actually. I think I didn't mention expansion specifically, but it's actually touched upon in 2 areas. One is the product engagement, right? Because if you think about expansion, depending how do you define it, like I define, there is actually a 2-step process. So engagement is about, I don't worry about monetization. I just worry about how do I drive more usage, drive more engagement with my product, right? And it can be in different formats. It can be they are adopting more features, right? At GitLab, we have this concept called golden journey. We have a new user onboarding flow. We try to hit certain aha moment by having them use at least 2 key features. But then from there, we are a platform. We have like many more features, and they are serving different needs as well. Like there are different parts of the engineer workflow. So ideally for us, we want them to adopt more of the areas. So the likelihood of them sticking with GitLab is much higher. Using another point solution is much lower, right? So we have this concept of feature, we call internally stage for per organization. Meaning we want them to adopt multiple stages, multiple key features, key use cases. So we use this concept of golden journey to build a map for that and to drive that. So that's one type of engagement, more features, right? It can also be about higher usage of the same feature, right? They are using this much storage. They're running this much pipelines using this many CI minutes. We want them to have higher usage or consumption. But all of those we haven't thought about monetization yet, right? But monetization comes naturally, almost in a way, when you have more usage, more engagement, whether it's more features, more users, more consumption. So that's why I mentioned in-product monetization triggers and awareness is important, because that's almost that next step before expansion can actually happen, right? You may want to, let's say someone has a lot of usage, at those moments, this tripped limits kind of prompts or tripped limit messaging is important. You may remind them, hey, you're running out of storage soon, right? Or Slack, you're hitting 10,000 messages. If you continue to go beyond that, because you are on the free version, you will lose access to historical messages. So those are in my mind, expansion is really a combination of deepening engagement, which you need to drive, and then setting up those smart in-product monetization triggers. And those two together will give you those expansion. And sometimes it comes in the format of upgrading to a higher tier, right? You are currently, let's say you are using a feature. At GitLab, we have done experiments like currently someone is using some security feature. After they use it multiple times, we have certain prompts telling them, hey, you use this multiple times. We have a more advanced version of this. Here are the benefits. Start a 30-day free trial with this. Like that's them leading into the potentially next tier expansion. So again, in my mind, expansion is really almost like between engagement and conversion, right? You combine those two powerful levers on the existing users. That's your expansion play.
This episode is brought to you by WorkOS. If you're building a SaaS app, at some point your customers will start asking for enterprise features like SAML authentication and SCIM provisioning. That's where WorkOS comes in, making it fast and painless to add enterprise features to your app. Their APIs are easy to understand so that you can ship quickly and get back to building other features. Today, hundreds of companies are already powered by WorkOS, including ones you probably know like Vercel, Webflow, and Loom. WorkOS also recently acquired Warrant, the fine-grained authorization service. Warrant's product is based on a groundbreaking authorization system called Zanzibar, which was originally designed for Google to power Google Docs and YouTube. This enables fast authorization checks at enormous scale while maintaining a flexible model that can be adapted to even the most complex use cases. If you're currently looking to build role-based access control or other enterprise features like single sign-on SCIM or user management, you should consider WorkOS. It's a drop-in replacement for Auth0 and supports up to 1 million monthly active users for free. Check it out at workos.com/Aakash to learn more. That's workos.com/Aakash. Okay, got it. And how do you think about growth loops? Because we've kind of visualized this as a funnel, but we mentioned Reforge. I think Reforge, Brian's growth series, like the first third of that course is like funnels are dead, loops are the new thing. How do we build it as a loop? Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny I mentioned that because I taught the advanced growth strategy course at Reforge, and that's the loops course. That's the entire course, not even the first third of the course. And I got asked that question a lot. Like a lot of students, they're like, Hila, like, is funnel really dead? Is funnel really bad? My answers for that is actually no. Both are very important. If you think about growth loops are more for strategy. Funnels are more for execution. If you think about any loops, right, there are multiple things linked, like steps linked together. Each of the two steps is a mini funnel, right? So really, funnel are part of loops. So the reason I say loops are for strategy is really the idea of growth loops. If you think about the the viral loop, right? Users bring more user, whether it's viral, maybe incentivized referral, collaboration. I invite you to collaborate with me. Or there's this big category of content SEO based loop, right? User generates some content, get shared by the user, distributed to Google, and someone search, they found, so content bring more users. All of those are a way to bring more users, bring more top of funnel visitors, but different from the traditional marketing channel, right? You do, maybe you do some sort of blog. That blog bring you a lot of new users. Those are compounding, meaning your existing user are doing effort for you, right? Your existing user are referring new users, or they're generating content for you to get more new users. So that's awesome. That's compounding without you having to do, keep doing things, right? With the marketing, you need to keep producing blogs to attract people. But in this case, your users are writing those contents for you. That's awesome. That's great. But that's not all. And also, I would say growth loops has certain products definitely have more opportunities of building growth loops, right? For SaaS product, if you think about the collaboration softwares, maybe products that can be shared publicly, like the build with Notion, right? Or Calendarly, there's a public link. Or the SaaS products almost like has many different use cases. You can leverage templates and things like that. So there are certain product traits that make those products can go better, right? And has an easier time of building product loops, which is awesome. You definitely need to think about it. It's an important strategy. If your product has those kind of characteristics, you definitely want to focus a lot on those. If not, you also want to explore opportunities to build those in, right? But again, don't overlook those marketing channels, because you still, those are important parts of growth. You still need to keep pushing new users, visitors to your website or to your products by using those marketing channels. And then funnels are really in all those loops, or in marketing channels, in all of those funnels, you need to optimize the conversion rate so that you minimize the dropout, right? You minimize the unnecessary waste. That apply to growth loops, that apply to marketing channel conversion steps, product-led growth funnel, sales funnel, everything. So day to day, actually, you think about funnel probably a little bit more. Maybe in the annual or semi-annual strategic session, you really dive deep thinking about what is the growth loop that may work for my product? What are some bets I want to place there? Experiment those growth loops. For those ones that's already working, it's actually your day-to-day maximizing the conversion rate, looking at a funnel and all of that. So both has a place.
All right. That's what I get for taking the self-paced version of the course. Clearly, if I had taken it with you, you would have clarified. I want to move on to growth tool stacks, because I have to admit, I kind of find you one of the nerdiest people on tool stacks, which is a good thing, you know? You talked about how at GitLab, you had to build a lot of these tool stacks. And cool enough, your former team has kept kind of the tool stack diagram that you started off at GitLab, and they've been using it. And it's really just full of tools. Like, it kind of blows my mind how many tools they're spending money on. So can you kind of walk us through this chart, first of all? Because I think it's a really cool chart that probably more people should use. And then second of all, can you walk us through what all these tools do? Because I probably only recognize 60 to 70% of them.
Yeah, first of all, this chart specifically you're talking about is built by, I think it's a marketing operation team, not me. I wouldn't take the credit, but my team did collaborate with them a lot, because we were trying to introducing some new tools and also leveraging some of their existing tools and data pipelines for sure. But high level, I would say GitLab is a very typical B2B company. A lot of tools in this chart are the sales marketing funnel, the tools involved there. My team, we added a lot of tools that's more in PLG funnel, which I can touch upon as well. But if you think about the sales and marketing growth funnel, right? The first step is you have some marketing acquisition channels. People become aware of your product there. There are a lot of different channel specific tools, which we didn't include there. But when users are going deeper into their buying journey, right? They are thinking more, maybe they visited your website. That's where more tools are utilized, usually for lead capturing and sometimes for data enrichment. So like Marketo, that's a very famous kind of old-fashioned tool for lead capturing and lead form and email marketing, all of that. Qualified, I think it's a chatbot on your website. There are many other like Drift and things like that can help you capture leads. And then you may notice there is something called Zoom Info in the foundational tools. That's also important because that helps you enrich the leads, which you're familiar, right? You're from Apollo. So like Apollo, Zoom Info, there's newer ones like Clay. Many are in this area. But basically, when someone visits your website or fill in a lead form, you want to know who they are. Sometimes they don't tell you, they make up information or they just leave them blank, right? But you don't want to miss that if someone from Microsoft potentially is thinking about our tool, right? There is a big potential sales opportunity there. So the data enrichment tools are actually a very critical in giving you more accurate data. And there are many of them there. So when you are thinking after like this initial lead capturing stage, you have those leads, but they are far away from getting ready to be sold to, right? There is this entire process of lead nurturing, and the marketing team in traditional B2B companies, they do a lot of those. So some of the tools you see here, like Pass Factory, those are like content like marketing lead nurturing. You can set up certain flow. Basically, you use those flow to nurture your leads. The belief is that if they read more, they learn more, they read the use case, they understand how the product works, their hotness, right, increases. They are getting closer to become a better leads for a sales team. And there are other tools like Sixth Sense, that's an account-based marketing platform. Basically, the idea is in B2B, you're not selling to individual, you're selling to this company. So you may need to identify what are the 5 key stakeholder or decision makers in this company. You may need to have a account-based strategy by targeting them via ads, email, and all of that. But a lot of the tools here are really about nurturing the leads, getting them ready. And then the next bucket is about sales engagement and automation, right? Once the leads is ready, maybe they turn into a MQL, marketing qualified leads. They got sent to sales team get involved. They are still doing work in terms of maybe prospecting, right? You say LinkedIn Sales Navigator, understanding who they are, doing deeper research. Maybe they set up certain sales sequence, like automated sequence of I call them today, I follow up with a LinkedIn message, I send an email on day 3, right? There are a bunch of tools in this category. I think in this chart, what's represented is called growth, the sales dev prospect engagement, but there are many other tools out there in this category as well. And then the tools that's really cutting through a lot of those are the CRMs, right? You have the HubSpot, you have the Salesforce, and some of the foundational tools. For example, you saw on the foundation, the high touch there. High touch wasn't there before. My team did some research, and it basically is this data syncing tool, allow you to sync sources from, it's called reverse ETL, syncing sources from multiple tools into central location so that you can really connecting a lot of data sources together. Previously, product usage data, marketing engagement data, account data are not connected, but by having a tool like this, you can connect those data, and then you can use these insights to trigger smarter email communication, smarter onboarding, and all of that. So that kind of covers very high level what's in this chart. But I would add, from a PLG perspective, actually, if you think about the PLG funnel, right, there are some similar tools, like the marketing acquisition is similar, the foundation data tools are similar, the CRM is similar, but the biggest difference of PLG is the focus is on user, is on behavior, versus if you think about the marketing sales funnel, the focus is really the leads, right? The leads, the company, the decision maker. So the user behavior focus of PLG really make important to introduce some new tools. For example, you want to understand the visitor behavior on the website, right? Google Analytics, Hotjar, and there may be some other newer version tools in understanding user behavior on the website. And then once they sign up, you really, really want to understand the behavior in the product, in the free version, in the free trial. What are the features they're using? How are they interacting with the product? Where do they get stuck? This is where the Amplitude, the Pando at GitLab, we actually used PostHog. It's a newer tool. Those come into play. It's email marketing, but different from Marketo, which is really focused on nurturing leads, sending newsletter, content, education. Those tools are really about driving behavior. Like it's triggered by behavior, maybe lack of behavior, and the goal is driving certain behavior. And then lastly, there are certain product-led sales tools or PQL, product-led growth tools, POCOS, Maduku. Those are some of the ones that can really help you identify PQLs among your free users by leveraging what is the customer criteria, the ICP criteria you want to set up, and then what's the product usage threshold you want to set up, some of the intent data as well. But those are all the tools I nerd about on a daily basis.
That's a lot of tools. So if you're a company growing, let's stick to the PLG side. So the second half of that list, which ones of these do you pay for first? Each one of these is going to be a couple thousand a month. How do you decide where to invest when?
I know it's unfortunate, right? It kind of, I don't know whether you remember, there is MarTech 1,000, right? It used to be MarTech 100 and very quickly become MarTech 1,000. Now it's probably more. Now, because MarTech becomes sales tech, MarTech, growth tech, each probably has 1,000 or something like that. And there's a AI version of that as well. So yeah, I think it definitely, it's a sign that this area has a lot of innovation. And it's also an area companies are willing to invest in because this directly ties to your bottom line, right? Give you more leads, give you more customer, give you more revenue. This is an area people are willing to spend more money on. But I agree, I think some consolidation is needed. If my client is a small startup and they are doing PLG, I would say the first place to invest in is definitely a product analytics tool. Some companies actually want to do an experimentation tool, but I usually thinking product analytics is more important because without insights, your experimentation are not driven by hypothesis, is driven by guesses, right? So you really want to have that foundation. Like PostHog is one a lot of my smaller clients use. Bigger clients use Pando, Amplitude. All those are pretty popular. But basically, with this, you can begin to set up that activation funnel, like we mentioned, right? What is the conversion rate? What is the activation rate? What are some behaviors that's high value that we should focus on more? So I think that's the first one. And from practical perspective, lifecycle marketing tool is another one. You may get away, right? You may, if you already have Marketo, if your sales marketing team already have another email marketing tool, maybe look into that. HubSpot can do a little bit of lifecycle email marketing, not ideal, but you don't need to buy another email marketing tool. If you don't have anything, maybe consider one of the lifecycle email marketing tool like Customer.io. I heard is one that's more startup friendly. And then the next one, I would say data enrichment. If you don't have it, right? Like Apollo, Zoom Info, Clay. There are some smaller, cheaper tools actually in this category. For example, you can identify who are the visitors on your website by matching that with LinkedIn and giving you a sales team a kind of a sales alert. I think it's called RB2B. There are many other smaller tools. Sometimes you can get away without even paying and give you some actionable data enrichment you can directly send to your sales team. I think that's a one with very high ROI. Like if you don't have anything in that area, definitely that's an area worth investing. I would say those are the bigger ones. If you become more sophisticated, definitely you want to invest in an experimentation platform, either homegrown or using some of the third-party tools in there.
Okay. There's been a huge specialization, I guess, of this growth software. And that's what I've learned. I'm currently studying like StatSig, and I'm realizing like their experimentation platform, at least as of today, is like a big step up from Amplitude. So if you just use what's in your product analytics tool and you don't get the specialized player, yes, you might be able to get 80% of the results. But if you really want to get everything out of a tool, then you need to go to a specialized player.
Yeah. I think Apple is another one that's in that emerging category, which give you very deep integration with your business metrics as well, like which is cool. So if you are in the stage, right? If you are in the right stage, definitely looking at some of the newer options.
Okay. And then I guess there's some like general product management tools that might bleed into growth tools, like we've seen like all these discovery platforms, whether it's Dovetail or Interpret. They all have different flavors, of course, or Zeta. How do you think about those and how they fit into the tool stack?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are great. I think we use Dovetail at GitLab as well. We also use usertesting.com. So I think those tools are important. You can sometimes get away by doing things more manually, right? It's not ideal, not as efficient. So that's why I didn't include them in my typical recommended tool stack, because there are so many things you can do. You can spend money on, and you have limited money, basically.
Yep. All right. So that's the growth tool stack. Let's move into growth product management more generally. So how would you describe for somebody who maybe is like considering the two paths, for instance, or for an executive who's trying to figure out how to like differentially evaluate a growth PM versus a core PM?
Yeah, I think I feel like the growth PMs and core PMs have very similar skill set, and the process of them working are very similar. They work with engineer, designers. They build roadmap, execute on roadmap. That's why they often commonly are in the same product organization, report to chief product officer or VP product. But one key difference is that the KPIs and goals of growth PM are actually sometimes more similar to the KPIs and goals of marketing team or sales team or the go-to-market team, right? Maybe the core PM, their goal is launch a new product, right? Like maybe build certain features or solving certain problems with customers. The growth PMs, their goals are driving more top of funnel through referrals, right? Increasing the free to paid conversion rate, increasing the activation rate, generate X number of PQLs. So their metrics and goals are actually more closely aligned with the go-to-market team. Because if you think about the PLG funnel and sales funnel, they are all funnels and they all lead to similar kind of success outcomes. So that's one. Their collaborators and stakeholders can be different, right? I often find when I was at GitLab, a lot of times my success, my roadmap, I need to collaborate with the marketing team, right? On the top of funnel stuff, free to paid conversion rate. I may need to collaborate with sales team when we are working on PQLs and stuff. So the collaborators might be different. And then the approaches are slightly different. The growth PM's approach are more experimentation driven, data driven, versus the core PM may have more more visionary kind of bigger project to work on versus more experimentations. And then, yeah, I think those are the main differences.
Okay. So when it comes to growth leaders, I have to admit, I tend to see that the tenures are relatively short, even compared to product leaders who already have shorter tenures than than marketing and sales leaders. Why is that?
Yeah, I would say, I think I read the other day, the average chief product officer has 2.6 years of tenure. It's the shortest of all the CXOs. And then VP growth or chief growth officer, which is less common. Yeah, you're right. Probably shorter than CPO, right? But maybe because his boss changes, he want to go as well, right? I think the core reason behind it is VP growth is still a newer role, right? When I was hired at Acorns, there's no such thing. This is not my title at all. We don't have a growth team. I was hired as a director of retention. I turned myself into a VP growth. When I was hired at GitLab, I was the first growth leader hired. There wasn't a growth team. My mandate is to start this growth team. So it's very often many growth leaders are hired to help figure things out. Like this company may have a challenge or they may have a hint that there is a potential opportunity there, but they need someone to help figure this out. They don't know 100% this will work or how this work and all of that, right? So inherently, there is this context there. And the other thing is, I would say probably growth is hard, right? Like you and I talked about, when you have title growth in your title, it's a big thing. Like if your title is VP growth and it's not growing, what are you doing there, right? It's a hard job. But in reality, there are so many factors that can contributing to a product growing or not growing. Many of them are completely outside of VP growth control, right? So it's funny when I teach classes or host webinars, we have those private channels or discussions. Many times it turns into a therapy session. And when people are like, I feel your pain. I was in that position as you exactly. And so I think both are potentially reasons, right? It's a new thing. You're hired to figure it out. And the end result of that, maybe it doesn't work, or maybe it works, but in a different way. So that's why you also saw growth leaders sometimes can shift reporting structure as well, right? In your case at a firm. And my bosses changed at Acorns multiple times. I reported to CEO, I reported to CPO, I reported to COO. There are definitely that inherent context. And then it is a hard job. But it's also a fun job. That's why I felt like I love growth people. Many people who know this is hard and this is painful, but still do it are the good ones, right? Brave, good, smart ones.
Yeah, and it's certainly a growing field. We were looking at data from Live Data, that data provider company, and they found that it was, over the last 20 years of the product management specialties, the fastest growing. So it's not like it's a dying field. It does have short tenure. So if you find yourself as a new growth leader, what are the main mental models you should have about how you could potentially structure your team?
Yeah, I think the very common team structure is that if you are, let's say, a director of growth product or VP of growth product, right? I would think actually go back to the growth model first. Figure out what are the key growth levers for your product, right? If you have collaboration SaaS software, probably the invitation or like the referral is a very, very important growth lever. Versus if you have a different product, maybe the lever is more focused on acquisition, right? Templates and SEO and UGC, all of that. So having that can help you. But the most common, if you initially, the team usually is just one team. You may have yourself as the growth leader, but also the growth PM, and you work with engineers and designers. You launch experiments, right? If you have more resources, if you begin to grow the team, there may be teams that focus on growth levers, right? You may have an activation team, conversion team, retention team. Each of those has a growth PM, engineer, designers, and maybe some shared data analyst. So that's the primary. And then you may have some teams focused on infrastructure and foundation, right? Telemetry team is a very common team. Experimentation platform / infrastructure is another common team. And then it's also important to think about your counterparts in other organizations, right? What's your counterparts in marketing team? What's your counterparts in sales team if you are in a B2B company? So thinking about that, finding allies and advocate to have direct collaborator and counterparts in those adjacent organizations is also very important as well.
Okay. So that was an 1.5-hour masterclass on growth, everybody. I want to switch into careers. And you've conducted a lot of career experiments. Can you talk about that and how you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I actually, I think one of my strengths, but also probably my weakness is I like to do new things all the time. Like I don't like repeating things. Actually, I studied, like I mentioned, biology and economics in college. My first job is a data analyst at a Fortune 500 company. And I quickly realized that I don't really like working on trivial things at a very big company, even though that company is a semiconductor company. If I have been there, like actually my stock would have worth a lot more money probably, which is like a pity. But yeah, so after working there, I started working at a company called growthhackers.com. It's actually less 10 people, a very tiny startup with one office and everyone sitting there, and half of the employees remote. So I really like to think about my career as a series of experimentation. I purposely want to try new things and optimize for learning rather than many other aspects, right? I did get my career title growth alongside of that, but that wasn't my primary thing. So when I was at Growth Hackers for some time, I was really fascinated about growth, and I wanted to test out my hypothesis in a different company, because Growth Hackers, everyone believe in growth, but it's a new thing. I want to see, does this thing work in another company that has no idea what growth is at all? So I know it will be hard, but I intentionally find an opportunity like that, joined at Acorns. There wasn't growth team. Nobody knows what experiments is, but I basically build this team from within and help educate everyone about this. So after I was there 3.5 years, and it is really fun, fulfilling journey. But then I become curious again. I want to understand how B2B growth is different from B2C growth. So this is my hypothesis this time, right? Like my hypothesis is it may be different, but there should be some similarities. So again, I joined GitLab with that in mind. I could have gone to another fintech, right? And speaking of which, I find your journey are similar, right? You did B2C, you did B2B. Maybe I'm curious to know your thinking. And now I work as an advisor, a so-called solo entrepreneur. So this is my latest growth career experiments. I want to know, how is this different and similar comparing from working at a corporate? I had some hypotheses going in. Some are proven right, some are proven wrong, and I'm learning new aspects of it. But I think my thinking is always like, when I evaluate whether I should do this or not, my mental model is, if I look back, I want to write a story about it. Would this be an interesting part of that story? And if yes, I basically took on that new experiment. That's why, like, I seemingly have done some very different things, but I guess the common line through is that I love data. I really nerd about data tools and all of that. I built my core expertise, which is growth, and I developed a little bit personal brand along with that, which all helped me through those transitions.
Love it. Yeah, I have a similar story. I think not as intentional on the experimentation front, though. Basically, my entire life has led up to this latest career moment. I started, in high school, I was known like as a public speaker. I did those types of competitions and I did debate. So what did I learn from like high school and college was like how to speak to people like on a podcast, but also how to do a lot of work. So I publish 4 newsletter articles a week, right? So very, very high volume. And I got that from debate because I used to publish like 100-page files like once a week. So now I just do the same thing. And then I spent kind of 15 years in product and tech. And interestingly for me, like I always wanted to be a founder. So after I was a PM for a while, I was a founder. Now I'm a founder again. And how I did the B2B, B2C jump. So interestingly for me, like each next employer really wanted my profile. So even if you look at the latest one, like Affirm. So why Affirm? Why did they hire me? Well, most before that I was in gaming and they wanted to bring gaming elements to Affirm and they wanted to think more like time used of the Affirm app. And that was our North Star at Epic. So they're like, you'll be a good person to bring that to Affirm. And similarly at Apollo, they were like, well, we want somebody who understands B2B, but also understands gamification. So I think I really benefited from kind of the halo of my brand names. And that's what I always tell people is like, if you're choosing between 2 roles, one might be even less title, but it's at a better brand and a company that's more likely to succeed. You may just want to go there because people give you a lot of credit for having been at that place.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you probably at that moment you never know the gaming background or debate background later on played such an important role in your life, right? That's why you can only connect dots afterwards, not before.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Staying on the theme of careers, so I'm curious, like as a first generation immigrant, how has that affected kind of your career decisions?
Yeah, I think like for me, I actually came to US in 2008, right? When I was 25. Yeah. So I was here getting my MBA and I always want to do marketing, but everyone, including the professor, tell me, Hila, as a foreigner, you shouldn't do marketing because you wouldn't understand the culture. You wouldn't understand the context, right? You cannot write the best messaging in the world probably. And you don't understand the backstory of a lot of things. I don't like that, but I also know that's true, right? Like I'm very analytical. So I actually took a route that I started my career as a data analyst, as I mentioned, but I don't like that either, right? So later on, I figured out this new field of growth, which allowed me to actually take advantage of my analytical background, but also has this certain interaction with marketing and growth and product. Actually, I thrived in that role. So I think my first learning is probably don't let your immigration background stop you from doing certain things. You may have disadvantages, you may have advantages. And nowadays, I think in the tech world, it's really about how you make a unique role that fit your strengths perfectly. And there are ways to do that now with AI, with all of those different career paths that doesn't even exist before. So I think that's one. The second one is that sometimes when I meet people, they often tell you, Hila, it's rare, actually. A lot of first immigrant, especially Chinese, right? We don't have a strong network. We don't have a fallback safety net. Me, my husband, we're the only people from our family there. We don't have a cousin, parents, any of that. It's very rare for people like us to take a solo entrepreneur career or leave a corporate job, which you could have a very clear path, right? But I did it anyway. It's not that scary. I mean, there are definitely ups and downs. It's not as steady or stable, but nothing is stable nowadays anyway. Even if you work at a big corporate, right, you may be worried about, how AI will replace my job in the next 3 months or things like that. So I think it's not, my main takeaway is that it's not that scary. It's not that bad. And just follow your kind of your passion and take advantage of your advantages, and make something that's best fit for you. And you can actually create your career path for yourself nowadays.
Love that. So in that story, there were several times where you had to job search into new fields. You had to job search and you got roles that I think a lot of people would really want. Director of retention at Acorns, director of growth at GitLab. What was your general approach to job searching? I know it was still a few years old, but I'm still curious if there are some timeless principles or lessons for folks on how you conducted those searches.
Yeah, definitely. I think I actually have a lot of disadvantages because I'm located in Southern California. I'm not in Silicon Valley. I always felt like you would have definitely a leg up. You have a lot stronger network if you are in an area that have high concentration of companies and opportunities. But I think there are a couple of things I did over the years probably helped. First is I learned that actually when I was at Acorns, even though I was VP growth and I'm kind of generating results and people are trusting me, I still find hard to pushing certain initiatives or getting resources. On the side, I was writing a book about growth. It's in Chinese. It's not even in English. So one day it got published and I shared that news with my boss and my team. And I noticed that in the next few months, all my initiatives get much easier time of getting sponsored and stuff. I'm like, I guess building your personal brand, right? Just helping people understand you are one of the best in your area, even outside of work, can help you make more progress at work. So that's one of my takeaway, right? I'm not actually very intentional in terms of building a personal brand. One thing I do is I like learning, I like sharing. So I wrote a book in Chinese. I wrote a lot of blog posts over the years. I'm not a high volume producer as you and many others. It took me a very long time to read every article because I'm perfectionist. But maybe because I spend my time, some of the articles I wrote are really long-living content for SEO, which is great, right? I also like to read things in the area, and I just share them. I don't kind of require myself to generate high quality original content every time. Sometimes I'm happy to be a kind of someone who find great stuff and share with my network. And people really appreciate that. So I think a lot of those help me build a personal brand on LinkedIn or get others to know me. That's one of my tip. When I talk with younger PMs or growth practitioners, right? Don't be afraid to share your opinion or share stuff and get yourself out of there. That's important. And I think a lot of all my jobs, actually, I got them through application. I didn't get them through like a network or stuff. I think I did spend a lot of time thinking about what's my next career experiment. So coming in, I already have a lot of hypotheses. I done my work and research on the company. I have another blog post that's kind of popular called First 90 Days as a growth leader. I lay out what I want to do for this role in my first 90 days. And through that, there are a lot of research going into it. And that really helped me nail the interview process. And I would add, lastly, if you're introvert, I'm actually an introvert. Introvert can network too. You don't have to force yourself to go to 100 networking events, but if you focus on being helpful to your network and sharing valuable contents, and that can over time attract the right people surround you. Like when I post some of the articles and stuff like that, people I didn't even know I'm connected reach out to me on PM or DM in Twitter or LinkedIn DM telling me how much they appreciate that. So just keep doing the work, keep sharing, and that will come.
Awesome advice. So we're on a product management podcast. We have to talk about some of the hot topics in PM, and some people's eyes might be glazing over, but I'm curious, AI has changed everything. It really has. So how do your growth strategies change for an AI product?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have been thinking that a lot. I think there are definitely a lot of things that are different about AI products, but when you think about the AI products growth, a lot of the growth levers and things we have discussed still apply for the most part, but there are some nuances, right? So if you're thinking about acquisition for growth for AI products, acquisition might be easier because let's say there are some truly 10x products. If you think about ChatGPT, Midjourney, those things don't exist before. They exist. They wildly exceeded your expectation, right? They went viral. Word of mouth is there. So that's one scenario where acquisition is easier. The other reason is that because AI is top of mind, individual users are looking out for contents and solutions, and even company VP of IT, they have mandate budget. They have to spend on AI products. So those are kind of the things that can help with AI acquisition.
Building great products is not easy, but today's podcast partner, StatSig, provides a complete platform for product growth. Here's how. Step 1. Keep building features behind feature gates. StatSig will allow you to turn these on whenever everything is ready. Even better, you can just open a feature to 5% of your users to validate it before launching. Step 2, run A/B experiments easily. You can make data-informed decisions about your product. What's even cooler, StatSig will give you valuable insights based on events you log. And step 3, analyze. StatSig is a full tool for product analytics, session replays, and web analytics. Used by customers like OpenAI and Notion, StatSig is the most modern all-in-one data platform. And best of all, it can be used as fully cloud-hosted or run on top of your data warehouse. So check out statsig.com/growth. And if you reach out, tell them Aakash sent you.
But a lot of the products, like there are actually a couple AI products I'm working on as an advisor. The challenges they're facing is the activation and retention is a problem. Like with activation, sometimes there isn't an aha moment. There is a letdown moment because you have so much hype around this product, right? AI and all of that. And you may go in and feel like, what is this? Like it's just having AI in the name. Or some products has another challenge. Maybe they're too horizontal. They're too powerful. Or maybe they're a little bit technical. The setup is too complicated. It's hard for user to find immediate use case, and they become AI tourists. So activation is actually a big problem with many AI products, unless you have such a 10x products as that are also easier to use, right? And the other one is that retention is a problem. Like if you look at some of the metrics, a lot of the AI products has very, very low retention rate. Even ChatGPT has super low retention rate. So I think the interesting thing there is that, are you going to adopt a new AI product as a point solution? Or maybe are you going to fall back to an existing product, maybe adding AI functionalities and AI features, right? I love use Perplexity in my search, but now Google has like AI overview. It's not good at this moment, but it's getting better every day, right? Eventually, do I stick with Perplexity, which I may need to pay money, right? Or I go back to my old habit. So I think those are the challenges and problems AI product need to navigate through a lot. But the point is, a lot of the things are changing faster for sure in AI. Like sometimes the products got replaced completely when the model updated itself, right? So things are changing faster for sure, but a lot of the fundamentals still apply. A lot of the standing out products right now are a point solution that has really 10x experience, and they really grow on viral word of mouth. And there are those other areas that still need to be strengthened and figured out.
That really resonates with the AI companies I've worked with and featured on the newsletter, like Build Better and Secta. Their acquisition's insane. Maybe even their free to paid conversion is fine. But when it comes to renewing on year 2, they don't see that renewal. They might have sold something that people bought, but they eventually got let down in some way, or they just were oversold on the product. And so when it doesn't deliver the results, they say, okay, it wasn't worth it.
Yeah. That's kind of almost like the entire AI hype has that kind of element there, right? It's oversold. There's a 1-year commitment, but after 1 year, we will see how things really work.
Yeah. And sort of orthogonally to that, but still on the theme of AI, what is your forecast for how AI is going to change product management? I saw like Shreyas Doshi had a great quote, like in the era of GPT-7, where designers are prompting GPT-7 for their design and engineers are prompting for their code. Everyone's a prompt engineer. Our PM's just going to have to be really good prompt engineers. Like, how do you forecast the future of this career?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a time that things are changing so fast and could change so much, I feel like you may as well want to focus on things that probably wouldn't change so much, right? If you are a PM right now, think about what aspect of your job, or what aspect, not even a PM's job, what aspect a job exists within a company still should be there. I think a couple of things really stand out. One is that if there is a company, there still needs to be collaboration. So I think collaboration, soft skill, stakeholder management, driving alignment, those still need to be there without AI or with AI, right? Maybe there's one day AI can drive alignment between stakeholders. That'll be awesome. But I have a harder time see that coming first. The other one, like I mentioned, I think this make personal brand even more important, right? Whether it's in the company or outside of company, people who have a personal brand like you, who have a channel, who have an audience, you put yourself in a much better position than someone who doesn't have a personal brand or audience or distribution channel, because things can change so much, right? But audience, like this direct interaction with people and connection, doesn't change, doesn't go away. And the third thing is almost like, I think AI can help with strategic thinking, but still human needs to really own that area, right? Strategic thinking, especially having multiple sources of insights and different considerations and nuances when you are thinking about what is the important things we do in our roadmap, right? Figuring out with all those potential things you can focus, what is one or two things that should be the strategic focus. And there may be so many data sources go behind it. And some are qualitative, some are quantitative, some are internal, some are external. I think that probably won't be impacted right away. So if I were a PM, I would focus on enhancing my soft skill, build my personal brand, really develop my strategic thinking into the next level. And while doing that, definitely take advantage of AI, use AI to increase your efficiency, right? Because you don't want to be left out in that. The more different aspects of enhancement you can use AI, whether it's automation, prompt writing, doing prototype, doing research, all of those, you can use AI to increase your efficiency. I think those two directions probably is where I would think about most.
100%. The people part of product management, the 9 to 5 triple booked calendar, it doesn't seem likely that AI is going to suddenly be able to sit in those meetings for you. All right. Shall we move to the lightning round?
Yeah.
All right. What's your favorite business book with lessons for product and growth people?
I have a unconventional recommendation. It's a book called Anxious Generation. I think it talks about how digital products are really changing our next generation's mind. It's a good reminder for product and growth people while you're building all those addictive products. Think about how that's impacting the world, hopefully in a better direction.
Hopefully you're not addicting us to stuff that's making us depressed, Sir Mr. PM listening. What's one newsletter that you anticipate hitting your inbox?
Lenny's.
What's one popular saying you disagree with?
I think there is a quote saying, without data, you're just another person with opinion. I think another person with opinion is actually very important. Sometimes there isn't data for everything.
There isn't always. What's a new product you've started using and enjoy?
I actually liked Perplexity.
Do you use it all the time? Do you ever use Google?
I still use Google, but usually it's like I get to the old habit of opening Google and search. I'm like, this doesn't work. Like, what are those answers? And I'll go back. So it's interesting, right? The old habit is there. Google has a window of opportunity to improve their AI overview feature before they lose me like permanently.
Yeah, it's the same with Google Home products. I have them all over my house, but now that I've used ChatGPT Advanced, it's like I just can't use Google Home. All right. What product feature or product are you most proud of shipping?
At Acorns, we built a product called Potential Calculator. It's a really cool tool visualization to help young people visualize how much they can save if they start small. I really like that.
Awesome. I'm sure that was huge for Acorns. What's one particularly memorable product failure that you learned from?
At GitLab, we tried to implement telemetry. That failed miserably. We have to roll everything back. I wasn't there for the entire time, but I joined like in the middle of it. We did it later again for a second time. That was successful, but that was a really kind of big learning for me.
That sounds rough. All right. Where can listeners find you online and how can they help?
Yeah, so you can find me at LinkedIn. Just search my name, Hila, Hila, and my last name is Qu, Q-U. I like to share stuff, so just follow me there. Reach out to me. I work as a growth advisor for companies. If your company need help with PLG or growth advisory, reach me out. And I have actually a PLG course coming out soon. So follow me on LinkedIn to stay updated on that.
All right. Check her out on Maven. Check her out on LinkedIn. Find her as a growth advisor. Hila, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and expertise with us.
Thank you for having me. It is so much fun.
Thank you so much for listening. If you found this valuable, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Also, please consider giving us a rating or leaving a review, as that really helps other listeners find out about the podcast. You can find all the past episodes or learn more about the show at product-growth.com. See you in the next episode.